I will be leaving shortly. I have an event tonight that I have to attend, and I have my own fundraiser that started 15 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago. But I care about this community enough to be here and make sure that I not only show my face, but also you hear from me and ask me some of the tough questions. Over 4 years ago, I sat down with the current administration on the illegal apartments. And I brought to their attention that you turning a blind eye to this is no excuse, but God forbid, in my district, that's all, let alone the city of New York, one fatality, because many of these apartments are death traps. You're going to have to explain, not only to me, but I'll make sure that the media will bring out, I brought it to your attention, you're allowed it to continue, and it's a tragedy that you would have to bear responsibility for. It's plaguing New York City. We have issues not only in the borough of the Bronx, but Queens and Brooklyn have been inundated with illegal apartments, conversions from one-family homes to four-family homes. The administration has turned a blind eye to it. We have more than 60, with the excuse of there's more than 60,000 homeless people. We don't want to force people out of their homes. Where do we put them? So rather than addressing the real issue and come up with real solutions to problems, they circumvent them, close one eye, and make like they didn't see. I assure you, when I get to City Council, I will stand up for you and make sure issues like this aren't pushed off of the table, but remain on the table until we come up with a real plan, short-term and long-term. Thirdly, this lawsuit, which is probably going to bring in some of these issues, whether it be SRO or illegal apartments, because the borough of the Bronx really has a good leg to stand on. For too long, we have been underserved and have been the dumping ground for the rest of the city. The administration has heard it over and over again. Refused to do anything about it. We were forced to file a lawsuit because the way this is going, that the mayor's plan to have 90 additional shelters be built, a majority of them were built in our borough. We have twice as many shelters as Queens, 41% more than Brooklyn, 13% more than Manhattan, and 99% more than Staten Island. It's unfair, it's unjust. It strains our policing, healthcare, education, transportation, and our public safety. So I'll be fighting for your rights as well as every other right.
Okay. So, no, because...
I didn't
Oh,
answer
I'm
the
sorry.
question.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yes, go, Judy.
In reference to the SRO's illegal conversions, we do have a serious problem throughout the district. The building department is required by law to issue the LS4 notice. There's no follow-up for a reason. The next follow-up will be a court order. And to have a court order, you have to justify a court order. You have to go in front of a judge, and you have to prove your case to invade that person's house. That's where the problem comes in. So, how do we cure the problem? Legislation. Legislation is there. It needs to be resolved. The city council code. Zoning laws do make good neighbors, especially strong zoning laws that make great neighbors and great communities. That's where the root of the problem is. Unfortunately, this mayor has taken, as the assemblyman mentioned, a blind eye. But there's more of a serious problem. It's development. We talk about overdevelopment, as the assemblyman mentioned, 90 homeless shelters throughout the city of New York. This is a payback. One of the newspapers has mentioned it. De Blasio is paying off the developers. And I find it somewhat of an irony that we have $700,000 from developers' money that went to Mr. Jornai.
How much?
700?
That's all?
734? I thought it was going to reach $1 million. So now, all this development money, and he stands here that he fought or he did a lawsuit. The return date on the lawsuit is, I believe, after the primary. So this is just, smoke and mirrors.
No, that's Tracy Towers.
It's smoke. Oh, Tracy Towers, that's right. Smoke and mirrors in the window. Don't be fooled. Democrats, September 12th, do not be fooled by these smoke and mirror games. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we're going
City, no. City, no. Clean house.
to the next question, and Mr. Ortiz will respond first. Come on, people. All right. experiencing social service programs and facilities housed in residential homes in our community with no advance notice and no way for the community to be made aware of what service is there, since the DOB cannot gain access. Presently, only DHS and group homes cross Community Board 11's desk, giving Community Board 11 only 40 days to respond from receipt of the request, to alert communities and allow communities to weigh in. What would you do to increase transparency and accountability among taxpayer-funded social service programs? And in addition, what legislation would you support to require or mandate that taxpayer-funded programs and landlords are accountable to the community before they take root in Venice? Yeah.
Well, there has to be a communication between the community board and everything that happens in and out of the community, period. Every single business, every type of work that's being done in buildings has to go through the community board. They should give some type of notice to the community board. I would be one of those city councilmen that would try to draft legislation to bring transparency as far as notices to the community board, so that the community board can now advocate and say if this is a good business or good work order or whatever it is that's happening within the community. The mayor and DHS and all its other departments are not going to want that type of open communication with the community board. Look at what they're doing with DHS. They have $1.7 billion that they're spending, and you know they're going to spend the money in the Bronx. And if you don't have a strong advocate here as a city councilman, the community is going to lose. You have to have a city councilman here that's not scared to go to court. And I'm one not to go. I'm not scared to go to court and bring landlords into court. I mean, I got back on the ballot here because I went to court myself and represented myself when Marjorie Velasquez threw me off the ballot. So it shows that I'm going to make the dedication to go to court and fight the fight. And as Giulio said, I'm not scared to bring LSA notices and bring the landlords that are here, that are committing the crimes and that are violating the rules, and I will bring them to court myself. I myself will find a way to bring them to justice. So we have to have that graduation. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you please repeat that question?
Oh, okay. Okay, I think, what would you do to increase transparency and accountability among taxpayer-funded social service programs? And what legislation would you support to require or mandate taxpayer-funded programs and landlords so that they are accountable to the community before they take root in Venice?
It's simple. We just empower community boards, give them more power, not suggestive body, but regulatory body, put them into the real, give them a seat at the table on these decisions. They are taxpayer dollars, and certainly this community and every community board throughout the city of New York should have more say on how it's used and how it impacts their community. The impact studies and understanding the effect it will have on a particular community. No one knows better than those that live there. No one knows better than the stakeholders. They should have more than just a suggestive voice, but real power on deciding any change in their district. Certainly, I'll be looking for legislation that can make that more possible. I just want to respond to comments that are being made. Folks, I'm going to be leaving soon, and I'm sure when I leave, there are going to be plenty of more bombs thrown at me. I've served this area for the last 5 years because my heart's in the right place. I didn't make any money. I spent money. I took a pay cut to go into elected office. I did this for the right reason. This country, this borough, has been good to me and my family. This is my way of giving back. So despite what you'll hear, despite what you're being told, despite all the negativity, which no other has never happened in this area, we've had great great, hard-working electors, from Jimmy Vaca to Senator Jeff Klein, to Michael Benedetti, to Assemblyman I'm going to make one point, and that's simple. I can't be bought. I will never be bought. I am financially stable. And I put my own money into this race. $175,000. Folks, it's not about money. I'm doing this for the right reasons. So you, me, and our families can have a safer community, a better community, and a brighter future.
Yeah. Okay, so now we are going to.
Thank you, thank you. I'll reserve my remarks only to if Mr. Jonai is in the room, okay? I never say anything when he's not in the room. But in reference to the 90 homeless shelters, remember why the city is able to, first of all, there's notice to all the community boards and the elected officials required by law. Don't ever be fooled by elected officials or community board telling you we were surprised. This was done overnight. They're all aware of it. It's by law, first of all. Second of all, the city went into agreement stipulation to provide these type of services. That agreement is 20 years old. That agreement has never actually been validated in court. It needs to be reviewed again. It needs to see what obligation the city has to people that are homeless in the street. We have to review those policies. And that's where the root of the problem is. We just saw a lawsuit, similar to what Mr. Jonai has mentioned, in Brooklyn. It's going on, the judge put a temporary restraining order. Same thing, services, right? Fair share of community services. And this case is probably based, the latest decision will probably be based on what Jonai's lawsuit, if ever makes it in court, if they ever have standing to it. The judge basically put a hold on it. And now the judge is reviewing the whole community. Every community to see each community. And I'm afraid that Mr. Jonai has opened up a can of worms for us. Because when Mr. Jonai wants to protect the South Bronx and say, South Bronx has too many. Unfortunately, the North Bronx is open. And people from the other side say, the north side of the Bronx does not have enough homeless shelters. And this judicial review is opening up a can of worms to development in the areas of Morris Park, Pelham Parkway, Troggs Neck, City Island, because we don't have those homeless there. His lawsuit is going to destroy our community. Thank you.
How about it?
Very good, very good.
I actually had a whole response on the social service thing, but, you know, again, if the charge is going to be made that we're negative when someone leaves the room, let's put it all out on the table here. Let's be factual, and let's just be upfront with everything. You know, listen, everyone here needs to raise finances and raise money to run their campaigns, but, you know, Mark, with due respect, most of your money comes from people who live outside the city of New York, and you're going to leave a bunch of people here who are your constituents to go meet them. And I don't think that's right. Frankly, and you're not self-financing this race. Most of the money is coming from people who live outside the city of New York, and many of them have ties to real estate. So that's something I will say to you, and that's something I will say when you're around or when you're not around. And again, you know, if you are successful in this, you will leave an open seat that may sit vacant for a year, or there's a special election. The county committee will decide, not the people, who the Democratic nominee is, and that's tantamount to an election. Listen, you might say this is negative campaigning, that's fine, that's your perspective, but we're all of different backgrounds here, of different jobs, of different ideologies, and we're all pretty much saying the same thing, that the amount of money the real estate industry is giving to you will have a negative effect on our neighborhoods, because these people are not giving to be philanthropic, they're giving to have influence. Many of these developers are developing in Pelham Bay and other areas, and it's of great concern. And to say there's never been a negative race here, I mean, with due respect, and I do respect you, but when you ran against Naomi Rivera, that was a very, very negative, nasty personal race. And what we're talking about here is your record, and what we're talking about here is the seat being vacant, and what we're talking about here is real estate having too much influence on our district. I think those are relevant discussions that we should be having. Thank you.
Mark, did you want to rebuttal?
I certainly do, but after this rebuttal I have to leave. But I do want to say, folks, I know who I am. I sleep very well with myself at night. And I wake up every morning thinking of ways that I can improve someone's life. I've been elected in office for the last 5 years, and I served you and everyone else with respect, true commitment, and dedication. I received money from real estate 5 years ago, and I did not benefit from it, and nor did anyone directly benefit from me being in political office. Don't be fooled. Folks, this is not a race about where the money came from. You want to talk about a waste? $100,000 has been taken from your taxpayer money for matching funds for candidates here tonight. I didn't use taxpayer money. I used money on my own pocket. When our seniors going out, when our children going out, and our education goes without, there's better ways to spend our money than publicly funding elections. I've been blessed and very fortunate to raise money from all industries. When I was raising money in district, the claim was, Mark, you're being bought off by people in district special interest. I left the city, I came out of the state. Now they're saying half my money comes from out of the state. Folks, this is just a play on words. I know who I am. I promise you that I will serve you well, that I am not conflicted, and I don't owe anyone, and I cannot be bought. I promise you. So, I will leave you with that, and I did apologize earlier. I apologize that this campaign has gone so negative. I apologize to you that you've been misled in many cases. This lawsuit is one that we're going to follow through. It's not going to impact this area at all in negativity, because the studies that are done by borough, and the studies that are done in a way that it demonstrates the difference between the 5 boroughs of New York City, not by community boards. So we will not be looking at additional development in certain areas of the borough of Bronx. This lawsuit is on behalf of the entire borough of the Bronx for the inundation of supportive housing units and the impact it has on our infrastructure, on our health care, on our policing, on our education, and our housing supply. It depletes affordable housing units. So God bless you. On September 12th, vote for Joe and I for a brighter future for yourself, your neighbor, and all of our families. Good night.
We have a rebuttal? We should, I think, in order to be fair, we need to give each of our candidates a chance to rebut what was just said.
I mean, I was directly appointed to, so I would hope I would get a chance to respond. Listen, I'm going to keep this focused on the issues. And listen, I will not be intimidated. When issues come to light that I have concerns about, I get them out there. There's a reason that some of this stuff has been picked up by the press. Because it's of concern. You can't tell a reporter what to write. They have independent thinking, they have independent judgment. They've decided to report on this race in many cases. As it relates to the public finance system, which I believe was the charge here, that money is somehow going out of your pocket. That's absurd. First off, the public finance system was instituted during the Koch administration, when it was revealed that donors were having too much influence on those in political power. That's the facts. Every other candidate in this race is in that system. Not only that, the fact of the matter is that Albany is trying to pass this system because both of the legislative leaders, Shelley Silver and Dean Skelos, a Republican and a Democrat, went to jail because things they were doing to their donors. That's a fact. They got convicted, rather, not in jail. They're appealing their convictions. I want to be very clear. Nowhere else in the country, listen, you might not like Washington, but let me tell you something, Paul Ryan and Nancy Pelosi didn't get frog walked out of the Capitol in handcuffs. That happened in Albany, and they did nothing to address that. That was a failure of leadership. And frankly, you shouldn't need to be rich to run for office, which is another reason we want to pass the campaign finance system. And you know how I know it's a good idea? Before Mark Joe and I ran for this seat, he voted for campaign finance reform in 2014. So don't give me this song and dance now that it's a bad system. And frankly, it does have influence on people. When you take a lot of money from the real estate industry, guess what? You don't support things like rent regulations that keep people in their homes. Money has an undue influence on the political process. Anyone who's in government will tell you that, and that's why we are working so hard to pass campaign finance reform up in Albany, where it's most desperately needed. It's why Republicans and Democrats go into that system.